Welcome back. In our previous lecture, we took a look at virtue ethics. We saw how virtue ethics is a normative ethical theory that is concerned with right action and with forming good habits, so that in forming good habits, we form good character. The aim of virtue ethics is the formation of good character. We also saw how virtue ethics sought to patch up potential deficiencies in relativism, ethical egoism, and utilitarianism. However, like utilitarianism, virtue ethics suffers from a potential problem. Virtue ethics is a normative ethical view, but it needs a meta-ethical foundation in order to ground what is good and what we mean by good. For example, if virtue is a good habit, then what makes a habit good? The answer to that question is not found in normative ethics, but in meta-ethics. And so in this lecture, we will attempt to provide that meta-ethical foundation. We will introduce a meta-ethical view known as natural law theory. We will take a look at what it is and whether it provides us with a real foundation for morality. Now, the term natural law can be very confusing because of the word nature. For this reason, we have to make sure we know what we're talking about, what we mean, so that we don't get confused. When we think about the term nature or natural, we can think of many things. For example, when we go outside, we say we are out in nature. Or again, we think of nature as what we are naturally inclined to. For example, if I like sushi and boba, I am said to be naturally inclined to them. But when we speak of natural law in philosophy, we mean something different. By natural law, we mean acting in accordance with what something is. Or in this case, act in accordance with what we are. In short, natural law requires that we first know what something is, or know what we are, what it means to be a human being, so that we can gather knowledge on how to act. For example, what is the nature of the human person or of the human being? Well, when we are asking for the nature of the human being, we are asking what a human being is. So what is a human being? Well, a human being is a living thing that can sense. We know that's true because right now we are living. We can't be listening to this lecture if we weren't living. Secondly, we know that we can sense because we are listening to the lecture, and listening requires ears to hear, the sense of hearing. And so, human beings are living things that can sense, which is, of course, confirmed by science. We call living things that can sense animals. So human beings are animals. But are human beings only animals? It seems the answer is no. For example, dogs are animals, cats are animals, horses are animals, and human beings are animals. We are all living things that can sense. But a human being is not a dog, a cat, or a horse. A human being is different from all these other animals. But what makes us different from all these other animals? We know that we are different from them, but what makes us different? Well, notice what we are doing right now. We are asking a question. We are asking a question about the things we experience. We experience dogs, cats, and horses, and we also experience ourselves. And in taking these experiences, in being attentive to our experiences, questions arise. So human beings are beings that can experience, question, and have awareness. But why do we question? We question things in order to know. We want to know what something is or to understand it. We want to know whether things are true, and we want to know why things are true. These three activities, understanding what something is, judging whether something is true, and reasoning about why something is true, are activities of the mind. They are activities of the mind that differentiate us from other animals. We've heard the expression before, my dog ate my homework. But we've never heard the expression, my dog did my homework. Because while dogs can eat homework assignments, they cannot do homework assignments. But why can't they do homework assignments? Because they lack rationality. Or again, animals like dogs, cats, and horses have awareness. They are aware of their surroundings. But it is not clear that they are aware of their own existence. For example, after some training, a dog may understand that if she sits, she will get a treat. But the dog does not think about its own rational process. In other words, while a dog can understand that if she sits, she gets a treat, the dog does not understand what it means to understand. So while a dog is conscious, it is not self-conscious. And this seems to be the case with all the other animals. But human beings are self-conscious. We can think about the way we think. This ability to think about the way we think and to think about the way we experience things, to think about the way we question things and understand things, judge things, and reason about things, is what we mean by rationality. So while all human beings are animals, a human being is not a mere animal. A human being is a rational animal. Rational animal is the nature or the whatness of the human being. And this seems to be confirmed by our own experience as well. Suppose someone disagrees with this account of the human being as a rational animal. We just have to ask them, are you using your reason to tell me that we don't have the ability to reason? And if they disagree and say that we are not animals, we again just have to ask, are you expecting me, a living being, to hear your argument? In other words, to say that human beings are not rational animals leads us straight into a contradiction. And so, it seems that human beings really are rational animals. Now, we have spent a lot of time answering the question of what it means to be a human being. But so what? Why does any of this matter? Well, remember what natural law is. Natural law is acting in accordance with what something is. So now that we know what we are finally in a position to ask how we ought to act. The nature comes first, and the way we ought to act follows from the nature. Here's the first thing that follows. If a human being is a rational animal, then a human being's acts cannot contradict what he is. If our acts do contradict what we are, then those acts are harmful to us. Let's take an example. We said that we are rational and that our reason is directed toward the truth. So consider what happens when a person lies. When a person lies, he uses his reason, the very thing that is made for the truth, in order to attack the truth. He turns his own rational abilities against their own purpose. That is what makes lying harmful. It is not harmful because of some rule outside of us says that it's harmful. It's harmful because the liar is working against what he is and what he is made for. He is a truth-seeking animal using his reason to wage war on the truth, to hide the truth. This might not seem convincing, and you might wonder whether this is true. But notice what just happened. Your very wondering of whether this account is true is proof that you are ordered to the truth. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to know. Consider it this way. What do we use our rationality for? Do we ask questions in order to know errors and mistakes, or in order to know the truth? The answer is the truth. And what does it mean to know the truth? It means to know things as they are. Now, here's the key move. The good is like the true. They are similar. If the truth is knowing how things are as they are, then the good means being what you are to your greatest potential. We don't say that a good pen is one that can't write. We say that a good pen is one that does write and writes well. A good pen is a pen that fully does what a pen is. What a pen is, I should say, supposed to do. And in the same way, a good human being is a human being who fully lives up to his or her potential. And now we can finally answer the question that virtue ethics left open. Remember, in virtue ethics, we are told to pursue good acts. But what makes a good act good? Here is the answer. A good act is one that is based on the nature of the thing, so that the thing is living up to its greatest potential. A good human being and a good dog are different, because what it means to be a human being and what it means to be a dog are different. Both have different potentials that have to be fulfilled. So to be a good human being means to live according to your greatest potential. And what is our greatest potential? It is living virtuously. It is living in accordance with human reason, directed toward the truth and directed toward the good. So to be good means to live according to the truth. And this makes sense. Even a bad person can know ethics. A bad person can study ethics and study it well. But this is the key difference. A bad person does not live according to the truth that they know, while a good person, on the other hand, does live according to the truth that they know. So the good is not just something we understand with our minds. The good is something that we live. Now, let's go back for a moment to the fact that we are animals. We said that a human being is a rational animal. The rational part is what makes us different. But we are still animals. And as animals, we have inclinations, we have passions, we have emotions. We are inclined toward food. We are inclined toward self-preservation. We are inclined toward many things, just like the other animals. These inclinations that we have are not bad in themselves. They're actually good. It's good to take delight in things. The problem is never that we have inclinations or passions or emotions. The problem is when our inclinations or our emotions are not rightly ordered. When our inclinations are not rightly ordered, then we live in disorder. We live in disharmony. It's this disharmony that makes us unhappy. Now, the virtue ethicist already told us that we have to rightly order our passions and our inclinations. But the virtue ethicist could not quite tell us by what standard we should order them. This is exactly the gap that natural law fills. Natural law gives us the foundation for knowing how our inclinations should be ordered. They are to be ordered according to reason. Why reason? Because it is reason that directs us to the truth and to what we need to do in order to live according to the truth, which is our greatest potential. Let's take an example. We say that eating is good. The inclination to eat is a good inclination. But a rational animal does not eat itself sick. A rational animal orders the inclination to eat by reason, toward the real good. In this case, the real good of eating is health. So the inclination is not destroyed. We don't say that eating is bad, we should get rid of eating. It's not treated as a bad thing. Rather, our inclination is rightly ordered. The animal part of us is governed by the rational part of us. And that's what it means to be a rational animal. Not an animal and a mind sitting side by side, but an animal whose very job is to order its animal life by reason. Now, at this point, someone might raise an objection. We've been saying that we are made for the truth, and that ordering our lives toward living according to and that we should order our lives by living in accordance with it. We've also, throughout this course, kept coming back to the Holocaust scenario. If we recall, the utilitarians seem to have a way out of the problem. Since the utilitarian cares about consequences of actions, and the consequence of lying would be to save a life, the utilitarian would tell us to lie to the Nazi to save the Jew. But natural law theory seems to be in some trouble here, because natural law says that we are made for the truth, and that lying turns our reason against its own purpose. So it kind of looks like natural law is going to force us to tell the truth to the Nazi, even when an innocent person dies because of it. But let's see whether that's actually the case. So suppose a Jewish man is hiding in my house, and a German official comes to my door and asks me, "Are you hiding any Jews?" Now, two things seem to be in conflict here. On the one hand, it is good to preserve the life of this innocent man. On the other hand, as a rational being, I am made for the truth. So it seems that if I lie to the German official, I am violating natural law. And so it looks as if I'm a bit stuck. Either I tell the truth and a man dies, or I save the man and betray the truth. But let's slow down and think about what is really happening. Let's ask, what is the German official really asking me? He is not coming to my door out of honest curiosity. He's not saying, "Hello, I'm just wondering, do you happen to have any Jews here, just out of my own interest?" No, that's not what he's doing. What he is really asking is this: do you have any Jews for me to kill? That is his real question. He is really asking me if he has Jews to kill. And once I know his real question, I can answer it. When he asks, "Do you have any Jews?" I can say, "No." And that no is not a lie. It is the truth, because his real question is, "Do you have any Jews for me to kill?" And the truth is that no, I don't have any Jews for you to kill. I do have Jews, but not for you to kill. I do have a man in my house, but I do not have a man for you to kill. Now, I want to be honest with you here. This case is actually something that's debated amongst natural law thinkers themselves. Some of them hold a stricter line, and they say that you may never assert something false, but that you may instead stay silent, or you might refuse to answer. Others defend more or less the kind of move that I just made here. But I want you to see that even within natural law, thinkers who hold to natural law theory think and reason carefully about exactly how far this should go. And that careful reasoning, that wrestling, is itself part of living as a rational animal. Now, there is one other popular objection against natural law. Natural law tells us that we should live according to what we are made for, the truth. It tells us that we have a purpose that we need to, and that's a purpose that we need to discover. But what does it mean to be made for a purpose? And if we are made for a purpose, then who put that purpose in us? Does that mean that there is a higher power, say a God? It sounds like if natural law theory is true, then there has to be a God. And if there's no God, then natural law theory must be false. But we should slow down here. We have to be careful about what kind of purpose we are talking about. Think of an acorn, for example. We do not expect an acorn to grow into an elephant. We expect it to grow into an oak tree. But why is that? Because there is something about the very nature of the acorn that directs it toward becoming an oak. Nobody assigned that purpose to the acorn from the outside. It's not like we made the purpose of an acorn to become an oak tree so that we could change the purpose of an acorn to grow into an elephant. Rather, the purpose of the acorn is written into what the acorn is. The end of it is internal to its very nature. And the same seems to be true of us. Our purpose is not handed to us from the outside. Our purpose is internal to what we are, to our nature as rational animals. And so it is not so obvious that someone has to stand outside of us and give us a purpose, because the purpose may already be written into our nature. Now, someone can still push the question further and ask where our nature comes from in the first place, and that quickly becomes the question of whether there is a God or not. But the question of God's existence is really a question that pertains to metaphysics, the study of being as such, and not to ethics, the study of how we should live. They are related, but they're also different. And so it's at least a question worth thinking about, the question of God's existence in relation to natural law, whether God's existence is the thing that grounds natural law theory. Now, having looked at the objections or concerns, let's take a step back and see where we have come. For several lectures now, we have been searching for a foundation of morality. Relativism could not condemn the Holocaust. Ethical egoism could not justify why my own interest is good in the first place. And utilitarianism could not tell us what the good actually is. And similarly, Virtue ethics could tell us to form good character, but it cannot tell us on its own what makes a good act good. Natural law steps in and attempts to offer an answer. The good is to act in accordance with what we are. And what we are is rational animals or rational animals. Animals whose inclinations are meant to be ordered by reason, and whose reason is meant to be directed toward the truth, and ultimately toward the good that the truth serves. Now, at the same time, natural law has some pressure points of its own. Natural law claims that we can know our nature, and that there really are purposes built into what we are. Someone can always ask, does nature really come with built-in purposes, or are we the ones reading those purposes in? Or again, given what scientists say regarding evolution, can there be an unchanging nature amongst a changing world? See, that's a real question, and it's one that natural law has to answer for. Now, I'm not saying that natural law theorists don't claim to have answers to these questions, but just that they have to show us how to resolve these tensions. And notice that this is no longer the desperate place we were in before. We are no longer asking whether there is any foundation at all to morality. Rather, we are now only asking how sturdy this foundation is. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you.